certain types of work, which is providing essential products and services at essential businesses or operations as defined below, okay? So as you go below and you look at essential infrastructure, it talks about sector. Banks, currency exchanges, consumer lenders, including but not limited to payday lenders, pawnbrokers, consumer installment lenders, sales finance lenders, credit unions, appraisals, title companies. This comes from the federal statute, and a title company in this statute or in this order means a closing attorney's firm. And there's a clarification I'm going to show you in just a second. So this is where we have the permission to remain open to do these closings, okay? You're probably wondering, well, what about us? Because nowhere in here does it say real estate brokers or real estate professionals. So what they did is they had a frequently asked questions, and under the frequently asked questions, the county came in and basically said, sorry, I'm trying to make this bigger for you. Here's your financial institutions that include title companies. And then right here it says professional services, legal, accounting, insurance, real estate, restricted to appraisal and title services. So this means that if you're part of a real estate closing, you should be able to get out. What we have done with our contractors and our employees is we have created a letter, which I'll share with you in a moment, that says that they are part of a real estate transaction and that they need to be there. So this is at the county level. We looked at Ed's already addressed the state level. So we have to look at the county level and the state level. The state level is a little bit different in North Carolina. And we need to take a look at that because we've been working very hard with NCAR to get this written. Ed and I have been on the phone with them for going on a week now. And basically the NCAR order came down here, and all it did is it said that the local government must keep the Register of Deeds open. And that shows up right here. It does not address whether or not the real estate industry is considered a essential function. It could be one of two things. It could be, number one, that they are going to allow the counties to determine it on a county by county basis, or number two, they just don't realize that this does not comply with the federal order. The state has priority over the federal order in most cases. So Ed and I are continuing to work very hard in North Carolina to make sure that the real estate industry is considered a essential business. How about down in South Carolina, Ed?
Letters have been sent from the Realtors Association, trying to get some more clarification on that. You know, we're working towards a goal with the no meat, no hands, no touch, because that's ultimately where we want to make sure we have some protection. With that in mind, the main thing to do is just ensure that we continue to operate in the same guidelines that we're getting. We haven't had any pushback. We do not foresee the same guidance in South Carolina that you're seeing in North Carolina. There tends to be a trend on where the safe in place is taking effect, but we'll see.
Yep. So the federal order which is called CISA or CISA. Basically, they have 16 sectors that is considered essential critical infrastructure under the Federal Emergency Declaration. And in that is included settlement services. That's where we're getting coverage from the federal government on loans and settlement services. So what we did is, based on that, we created a letter for our providers. And what I would recommend, and I don't know if you guys have like a real estate broker's card or something, have some ID on you that lets them know that you are part of a real estate transaction and that you need to be at that transaction. Here's what we did for our employees and our general contract and our independent contractors is we gave them this letter. We addressed it to local state law enforcement. We indicated they're an independent contractor for Brady&Kosofsky. Then we quoted the law and gave them a phone number to give us a call if there's an issue. Guys, there might be something that y'all can do with regard to that. We're using health affidavits with our signing agents. If you hire one of our firms to come do a closing for you, our folks are having to check in every day with us to let us know that, and they're affirming with us that they're not feeling the effects of any problems like cold or flu symptoms. They haven't come into contact with somebody, and they haven't been in Italy, China, South Korea, or New York is one we're going to have to add for that. And we're having them do this every day they go out. This is for their protection, for your protection, for our protection, for the client's protection. This was something that the National Notary Association came up with about a week ago, and we've had in place for about a week now. So crazy stuff all around. All right, so we talked about the executive orders.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, sir.
I did want to I do have a story from the field that I did want to share, just so that people are aware of some of the miscommunication on those health affidavits. Not on a purchase, but on a refinance. We had an attorney who is, some attorneys are starting to feel like maybe they should hold off a little on going to these closings or have some clarification, and definitely want those healthcare questionnaires answered. The one I'm talking about just happens to be very adamant about going and understands the importance of getting these transactions completed. However, when he did show up at the home, the borrower was confused because the lender had told them that he would show up with a mask, which I think all our direction has told us you wear a mask if you're sick, and that he would be wearing gloves. And that was news to him, which he certainly has the right to do that. But it was news to him, and the borrower did not want that. But the lender was very enthusiastic about telling them that would be the situation. So the borrower just felt like it would be pertinent for people to know that there's some misdirection given.
Right. And guys, if you want people in protective clothing, if you want your clients in protective clothing, if you want to be in protective clothing or have a mask or gloves, do it. I had an accident over the weekend. I broke an arm, I broke a hand. I sat in the doctor's office yesterday or 2 days ago, having my hand set with a mask on because I just didn't want to get quarantined by my wife in my house from being at the doctor. And they laughed, and I laughed about it and made light of it. But we're under very different times right now. So Ed, let's get to what they really want to hear about. Let's talk about the digitization of closing process and other options. The big thing you're hearing about today is the remote online notarization. And the way that would work, guys, is I'm going to pick on somebody. I saw Mark Zolotaroff earlier on the call. I would have Mark turn on his camera. I would turn on my camera. He would see me. I would see him. And I would introduce myself and I would say, Mark, welcome to the closing. My name's Brady&Kosofsky. We're here. We're going to do this transaction today. Can you please complete the following? I need you to hold up your ID to the camera, and he would hold it up to the camera. I would be able to take a scan of it. That way I could verify that he is who he says it is. I might have given Mark some questions early on when we were doing the intake. And, the questions that our firm uses are sometimes, what was your high school mascot? What was the name of your elementary school? What color was your first car? Things like that. And if you were able to answer that, we would continue. A lot of the remote online notarization platforms that are being used by the banks are a little more sophisticated in that they will go and ask you questions based on a credit report or something else. And you have a certain amount of time to answer the questions, and then it'll go on and you'll be able to pop the documents onto the screen and run through them. In South Carolina, there'll be an attorney on the screen with you. In North Carolina, it's an option. You can either have the attorney on or not, depending on what you want. And at that point, we would run through the documents and explain that this is the promissory note. This is what your monthly payment is. Please sign right here. And you would click on a button with your mouse, and it would put your signature on there. Or it would have you adopt a signature. Or it would say, if you have a touch screen, please use your finger to draw a signature. So the signature can be put on there in many different ways. It just depends on what system the bank is using. At that point, we would run through the entire package, answer any questions, and then the notarial act would take place, and the person on the other side of the computer would be able to then enter their credentials and notarize the documents as we sit there. Nobody's coming in contact with each other. There's no documents going back and forth. It is the most sanitary, germ-free way of closing that we can do. Sounds great. Ed, what are the challenges we have with that?
Well, as you mentioned, currently in South Carolina, there's still and we're hoping to see a relief from this soon from the Supreme Court. I've been working with their lobbyists for both the South Carolina Bar and the Supreme Court to get a general leniency or a temporary leniency on the requirement to be in person for the attorney. Right now, we're at an impasse because there is a licensure issue that could come into play without following that. I did also want to mention, Jamie, you and I had a good conversation with Fannie Mae yesterday about what we saw coming out of New York with the idea of just using any platform such as FaceTime or Skype, one that does not have the requisite audit and memorialization functionality that we see with the three platforms that we work with. The indication was that you can have those rules, but the investor and/or lender is not going to accept that telephonic closing. So you can set it up, you can get the documents, and you can go down that route, but you're probably not going to get a wire.
Right. But where it would work is if you have a
the drive-by closing, that definitely works, right?
Right. But what I'm talking about with that is if we had a cash deal, we could definitely do a cash deal using the New York model, and that's using Skype, that's using FaceTime, that's using GoToMeeting.
The conventional financing or
right.
investment.
Right. If there's a loan involved, guys, the lender is going to require that they use a platform that the lender will normally choose. It is common right now for the lender to choose it. In North Carolina, our Secretary of State is in the process of approving remote online notarization as well. Today's electronic closings that we're doing work where we have to send a notary to be within the proximity of the person signing. So what we've been doing is our notary, our signing agent will take the documents out if there's documents, or they will go out and they will sit outside. They will sit in the car, and they will go to the door and they will say, and the borrower will say, I have signed the documents. Here's my driver's license. And they hold it up and they're able to notarize based on that. What Ed's talking about with the drive-by closing, because we're still in a situation where the Secretaries of State have not issued the remote online notary order, what we're having to do is drop documents off, have them signed, then we have the people that sign the documents come within 6 feet of the notary, show their ID and say, my name is Brady&Kosofsky and I signed these documents that need to be notarized. At that point in time, they would put those documents down, the notary would come over, pick them up, they would go to their car or go outside or step back, review the documents to make sure everything has been signed. The borrowers or buyers would have the opportunity to call the attorney on the phone if they have any questions or if they wanted an explanation. And at that point in time, we would be able to notarize it, get it processed, and e-record it in the states that are in the counties that you e-record. In the counties that you cannot e-record in North Carolina, they've been putting a box outside of some of the offices. You drop it in the box, you knock on the door, they come, and then you walk away. They come out, grab the documents, and record it. It's very clunky, but it's happening. And it's different in all 100 counties in North Carolina. In South Carolina, it's a little different because you don't have to record in order to get the keys, and you don't have to record in order to get funding. How do we handle funding? We're willing to wire funds. I don't know about Ed's group, but we are willing to wire. We want to protect everybody from having to come too close to grab a check or grab a document.
Hey, Jamie.
Yes, sir.
I'm getting some questions that I just want to get some clarification on. From you mentioned the thin closing and wanted some clarification.
So what is it?
More importantly, I did want to let everybody know that B&K is an approved attorney for North Carolina, and McDonnell's approved for South Carolina and receive your orders. I put there's a chat on the side there, Jamie.
Yep.
I just let them know from McDonnell they can send any contracts to purchase at McDonnell Law Firm. What's the email address for?
I'm going to put it in right now.
Okay, I just want to make sure they have that information.
Yeah. Our email address is going in right now. Closing team 3 at. So, what a thin closing is. A thin closing, I think Candy asked that. Candy, what a thin closing is where the lender sends, let's call it the junk docs. Anything that does not need to be notarized, they will get sent ahead of time to your borrower, and your borrower will go through and sign them. And then then the signing agent will bring the documents that need to be notarized to closing, have them signed and notarized. And what that does is it makes the stack of documents that need to be signed in with everyone there as thin as possible. It cuts it down to about a 10 to 15 minute event. And that's what a thin closing is. Not all banks are doing that, but I know that there are some in North Carolina that are doing that for sure. I want to say Churchill Mortgage is one that I know of that is doing thin closings at the moment, I think. But, you know, it's a bank by bank process. So let's talk about what happens if we can't do any digital closings at all. You know, one thing that Ed and I have been in contact with Fannie Mae about is doing a limited power of attorney and having it done using a remote notary from Florida or from Virginia. And basically the way that works is your folks would sign into notarize.com. They would have a document from us. They would sign it. That online notary would notarize it online, allowing the closing attorney or the real estate broker or somebody to sign those documents on their behalf, preferably the closing attorney. That way we can get it notarized and recorded. This is also a work in process because right now the secondary market who are buying the loans, not all of them will allow a signature by limited power of attorney. And we've been told by Fannie Mae personally that they are in the process of changing that policy to make that happen. How long are these changes going to take? I'm not sure, but it is happening very, very quickly. I've never seen the industry move so fast. So I see, so Jackie, I see a question. In South Carolina, can sellers and buyers set up a POA for the attorneys to sign and all parties are on via conference? Ed, I'm going to let you handle that.
So in South Carolina, currently, the attorney cannot sign his POA if it's Fannie Mae, a Fannie Mae loan. Same with Freddie. Actually, no one with a financial interest can sign under their current guidelines. Hopefully, you know, I think Jamie mentioned earlier, there's some definitely some indication that that should be loosened up here in the next week or so. But if you probably have some attorneys that says that can be done, I would refer them to the Fannie and Freddie guidelines for their underwriting, in which it says the title agent slash settlement agent cannot sign on their behalf.
Right. Okay. So over the last 10 days, it seems like one long day. Ed and I have been, I think I usually talk to Ed first thing in the morning about 8 o'clock and usually sign off at about midnight. We have been really busy. Our firm is part of a consortium of firms like ours that cover the entire country. And beginning about a week ago, we started having town halls with different stakeholders. We had one with the lenders where we had just a whole bunch of lenders on the line. And we basically opened up the mics and said, guys, what are you doing? How are we going to do this? How can we help? We did the same thing with the government, meaning the secretaries of state and other officials. We talked to the home builders yesterday. Last night, I had 2 conference calls with my abstractors and searchers, and I've had a couple of conversations with the various economists. And right now, we're so early into this, the indications are that I'm getting are that the lenders are really, really, really busy with the refinances. They're putting purchases first to try and get the purchases done, and that purchases are still happening. You know, there's a lot of question as to how are they going to be doing the appraisals and things like that. I don't want to go too far down that hole, but they're looking at solutions such as drive-bys or other types of valuations for the homes. So that's what we've heard from the lenders. The government, we are going to get relief in the way of naming our industry as essential. And if you haven't already done it, please push on your local real estate or board of realtors, as well as the state and any national groups you're a part of. What we're hearing from the state officials is they are going to keep our registers of deeds open. Ed, can you address the home builders and the GSEs?
So the GSEs are obviously in a state of cooperation. It's having that full conversation, which fortunately our symposium is affording for the mortgage insurance companies, the lenders, the secondary, the wholesale lenders, the underwriters. We do have them in that one forum, and it looks like we're moving to a solution that will help us to maintain our pipeline and get us a future pipeline methodology. The home builders, my home builders, and I represent 2 of the top 10 builders, are actually seeing a flurry of business and are still operational and closing. They are looking for a path forward as far as the no touch, and I'm working with them on that. The NHAB did reach out and joined our call yesterday. They are seeing certainly some questions about the environment on how to continue to have their closings. The appraisal is an issue or a question, but we certainly have the dialogue. They're looking to work with us on a local and national basis to make sure that we can get the governors to truly look at this executive order that you and I drafted.
Yes.
I would like to emphasize to those on the call that in both states that we're seeing some dragging of the feet by the South Carolina and North Carolina real estate bar. Jamie and I were very particular with what we crafted in North Carolina and South Carolina to include them so that there was some comfort. In North Carolina, there was a pushback at the very end on the ability to fund. We have gap coverage that says that we can close without recording, but we have a statute in North Carolina 45A that says we can't disperse, i.e. cut checks, until we get our documents of record. Jamie and I have been very enthusiastic about getting a leniency on that statute. We haven't got a yes yet, but we're looking at it very hard. So if you are out and about, make sure that people know that there needs to be a relief of 45A.
And guys, we need the real estate, or we need the realtors, we need the lenders, we need the title companies really, really trying to push that through, because, you know, all of this technology, all of these little tools and tricks that we've learned are going to work fine as long as the Register of Deeds remain open. If it gets to the point that the Register of Deeds stop taking recordings, that's where we're going to run into a problem. We do have an order from the government that says specifically that the Register of Deeds and all other state offices are to remain open at all times. But that could change at any time. We just really want to make sure that we get as much noise being made in Raleigh as possible to prevent that. And Ed, you can probably say the same for South Carolina.
Yeah, we're seeing some have limited access, and we're addressing that. Right now, we have not had.
And it's not that big of an issue.
we've not had the bigger issue we've had is just people calling, saying that their current attorney is telling them that the county is closed down, and when we do some research, we find out that it's not. There might be some limitations, and that's two totally different situations.
Right. Ed, can you, so I do want to go back to one thing. It's really important to talk about. Can you explain what gap coverage is?
So gap coverage basically means, should there be a delay in recording, that if there's an intervening lien or a something that comes into play to affect the quality of title, the underwriter is indemnifying the lender adds to that. So there's typically a limited gap, but some of the underwriters have come out with some different varieties of what that gap coverage means. Fortunately for Jamie and I, we do have sources of the most aggressive gap coverage. So when I said earlier about checking with your lender about gap coverage, they'll probably want some further explanation of that. Please send them our way, and we'll be happy to talk to them, make sure that they're in a position that should they choose to accept gap coverage, that we can continue to make sure that your contracts are processed and your lenders are funding.
Right. Right. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to take some questions. Last night, I was able to open up the mics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try, if we could try and open up the mic, Sarah, and we would ask you to please state your name and then ask the question, and we will try and address it. Okay?
Microphones are open.
All right, thank you. What questions do you guys have for us?
Hello, this is Chris Ty. I'm in Cornelius, North Carolina.
Hey, Chris.
And this is going to be a little off point for you guys. If you wanted to say, hey, anecdotally, here's what we're thinking or hearing or whatever. But I think probably everybody on this call is, particularly the ones of us who are in Mecklenburg County, are thinking, okay, so how far should we pull this string back from the point of closing in terms of the whole transactional process of from listing to selling and moving all the way on through. You guys hearing or seeing anything about that in terms of essential services?
And I'm going to let you address that just because I had a noise come over. I did not hear the question.
So as far as essential services go, Amy addressed this earlier. The title is defined by not just as essential services in North Carolina, but nationally as part of a directive by the Department of Treasury and Homeland Services.
Correct.
Homeland Services title has been told to stay at work, and not just because we want to, but because we have to in order to keep the financial sector afloat. As far as the real estate broker is concerned, there is not a provision currently for that. Jamie and I have reached out, but I would also reach out to your local association and any and all contacts you have to try to have that added to the list of essential services.
So I would, it's Andrea Bushnell who's been helping us on that. The state, and then Marin is local. I think is your local leader. So I think that it's and what you've got to do is you've got to say that it's essential for the financial well-being of the citizens of the state of Who do we have? Any other questions?
Can you repeat that last little bit? I think we got cut off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would just, as you make your request, I would just indicate that a real estate broker is an essential service in order to allow the consumer to have access to the equity in their home for their financial well-being. I mean, look, people are losing their home. If they've got to get out, they're going to need a real estate broker. I'm sorry, if they're losing their job.
I have a question. This is Allie with Executive Title.
Yes.
I have two questions actually. I just want to clarify the limited power of attorney. You said it is okay and acceptable in North Carolina, but I wasn't clear if Ed was saying South Carolina is accepting it.
So in North Carolina, from a law standpoint, it is acceptable. From a title underwriter standpoint, you would know whether it's acceptable or not. Where we run into trouble is with the lender. Because if you're borrowing money from Bank ABC and Bank ABC is selling their loans to Fannie or Freddie, Fannie and Freddie at this moment will not buy a loan that was closed by a limited power of attorney.
Okay.
So what's going to happen is Bank ABC or Executive Mortgage is going to say, sorry, we can't close it.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Allie,
Go ahead.
you and I hadn't had a chance to meet each other, but executive title, who are their underwriters?
Fidelity, which is Darcy Comstock, she's on as well. I think she spoke with Jamie yesterday. We're going to probably defer to the lender.
Perfect. I wanted to know, and there's your answer on the gap coverage. And Darcy is on the call.
She was earlier.
There's a lot of variety in what the gap coverage is covering. So I was just hoping maybe I was asked about the gap coverage. Wondering if Darcy could comment, or maybe you could find out from her the extent, or maybe you're familiar with their extent of gap coverage and their view on helping us get 45A. Lennon.
Hey, this is Darcy. I don't know if you can hear me. My audio is not particularly great.
I'll hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. So I think we've got a pretty good gap coverage in place in North Carolina right now. As far as any transaction under $10 million, we've got a requirement in the commitment that it only kicks in should the Register of Deeds completely close. But as long as someone can e-record, it's business as usual for us in North Carolina. But in the event that things are looking dicey and we think the Register of Deeds might not close, we're having attorneys sign, or having the seller sign a gap affidavit that the attorney can hold on to, and then they can go ahead and still disperse even if they are unable to record the document should the Register of Deeds close, based on the signed gap indemnity and the transaction being under $10 million. And then we ask them to record as soon as possible. We do run into the question then of, which is high on everyone's mind, 45A and the Good Fund Settlement Act. So the best we can do right now is we're having both the buyer and the seller sign an acknowledgement saying that we understand that this may run afoul of the statute, but we're directing you to go ahead and do this anyways. And hopefully give the attorneys cover while the law is being changed during this health crisis, if that makes sense.
Jamie, do you want to comment on what kind of that puts us in a dilemma?
Right.
until 45A is lifted, there's criminal and financial fines for not following 45A. Until we can get some leniency, we actually came out of the gate with trying to get the lenders and buyer sellers permission, thinking that 45A would have been one of the easier parts of getting relief, but it has not been so far.
No.
We can't put our attorneys' licenses and criminal record at risk, much less our own.
Yeah, the E&O companies in North Carolina will not cover attorneys for doing that.
I have heard Lawyers Mutual is trying to come up with something through the grapevine. Yeah, I think there's going to be some guidance forthcoming from that E&O company shortly.
Okay,
it's not a good solution right now, that's for sure. So it is put the pressure to bear on the.
Yeah, any pressure that can be brought to bear would be great.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very much on our radar, and we're trying to get a solution that's good for the attorneys and good for the buyers and sellers.
Thank you, Darcy.
I've got a question. Nicole Klinke here. The earlier statement, that real estate agents are essential for the well-being, yada, yada. I wrote that down. To whom would we send that?
I would recommend that. I'll tell you exactly who to send it to, actually. Excuse me for 1 minute. I got to pull something up on my email. And what I'll do, Sarah, is I will send you this email.
Awesome. And we've also for copies of the slides, if you'll share them.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie, I have also an address. I've been talking to the NAR and also our local board. Last night, actually, I talked to Anne-Marie, and we're trying to come up with something that they can amend this thing that they just put out, because obviously they weren't thinking very thoughtfully, because all the exceptions that put in there, all the services, including title, the attorneys, the mortgage companies, and so on, all related to real estate. So it really doesn't make any sense. And this morning I was talking to the Charlotte Business Journal, and my problem with this thing is, here we are, Mecklenburg County is surrounded by several other counties, including York, Union, Cabarrus. And so how are they going to stop people from showing properties in these other counties? They haven't, said anything about, okay, if you show a house or list a house in Cabarrus County, you're okay, because again, we have offices everywhere. So they haven't really clarified that type of stuff. So it's very vague at this stage. And so NAR is trying very hard to make it, or trying really hard. I talked to them last night to make this nationally, that real estate is going to become an essential service, not just for Charlotte or Mecklenburg County, but throughout. So they are working behind the scene.
Right, and we need the governor. We need the governor to do that, because right now under the governor, it is not considered a. It is not considered essential. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So, Hadi, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you an email that I was sent yesterday that needs to be filled out. It's got all my information in it right now, but it needs to be filled out and sent to the email address that I've got on it, and it's I don't know what it stands for, but it's BEOC@ncdps.gov.
Jamie, this is Kurosh. I just want to share something here. So as far as supporting the National Act, if we're trying to support the the S3533 for Secure Notarization Act, which is a national act.
Correct.
We need to send those messages to our local senators.
Correct.
And, for us, it will be Senator Richard Burr and Tom Tillis.
Yes.
This is Ed McDonnell. I did want to point out something about that federal act. The federal act does require acceptance by the state of those of that act. I can tell you, I foresee it both North Carolina and South Carolina, the real estate bar pushing back on that and it not passing. What Jamie and I have put into play with our executive orders are something that is palatable to the South Carolina and North Carolina bar because of the temporary nature of it as well. So I would be cautious about pushing for the federal law.
Okay.
Right. And our Secretary of State is very amenable to doing something in North Carolina. And I know that South Carolina feels the same way. I'm involved down there, but not as involved as I am in North Carolina. But we've got to get some relief from the state bar on this.
Hey, Jamie and Ed, this is Sarah. I think it would be really great if we could follow up this session with kind of an email with action items. So we have our North Carolina brokers, our South Carolina brokers. So if we could just say, you know, these are the 3 steps that you need to make to kind of help push for these types of changes, I think that would make it a little bit easier on our end for our agents to kind of help you with this.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, awesome. I'll follow up with you afterwards.
Okay, sounds great. All right, folks. It's 11 o'clock. We want to let you all have the rest of your day back. If you need to get in touch with us, I know that Hadi and Kurosh know how to get a hold of me. This is the information's on the screen for the both firms. Ed, I don't have your phone number. I'm sorry, man. I've got your cell number on speed dial.
That's okay. Shara with McDonnell and Associates will send out all our information. What's the email that we should be sending that to?
Send it to Sarah. I think she can relate that to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I'll message in the chat.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Good luck. Please be safe.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.